Welcome everybody to another Party Pace podcast. And today we're going international. We're going to be talking with Sam Alison from the brand Singular Cycles that's based in the UK. And they're pretty unique because they've really embraced this 29er drop bar bike very early on. And you're now available to get some of their frames here in the States. But before we talk with Sam, I do want to say if you guys appreciate this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button, or better yet, check out the merch store. We've got some fun new products, especially this performance Paisley cycling cap. This is going to go live after we get back from Sea Otter, so I think about 2 or 3 weeks. But you can hit the notify bell on the caps there, and you'll get notified when they drop. We've also got stickers, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's chat with Sam. How's it going, Sam?
Hey there, Ross. I'm well, thanks. And you?
Great. You're actually our very first international live guest on the Party Pace podcast. So super stoked to have you.
Wow, I'm honored. Excellent.
You've been operating in the UK for a while, but for our US viewers that might not be familiar, can you give like a really brief company history of when you started?
Sure thing. Yeah, so we started in '05. The company was founded. First had frames arrive in '06. That was a sort of early steel mountain bike that could be run drop bar or flat bar, the Swift. And things have evolved from there. But certainly embraced the idea of drop bars off-road with biggest, fattest wheels possible from an early stage. So that was the Swift, and then gradually built out the range, doing more different gravelly types of things, the predecessors of the Peregrine that we've got here, that you've got for testing as well, and a number of other different models, and we can sort of dig into that in a bit more detail. But yeah, that was '06. So brand was slowly built, really grassroots, just very, no external investment or anything, and just gradually grew. Got to the point where it was a full-time thing for me from around 2010 for a few years. And then without going into the gory details, we had a bit of a hiatus for a couple of years. Then I saw obviously the current gravel scene and everything taking off, and I was like, damn, a lot of these bikes look a heck of a lot like these bikes that I've been designing for the last 10, 15 years. So I thought, okay, it's a good time to relaunch the brand, get things going again. We kicked off again with a bit of mostly the custom titanium stuff that we do that we can have a little look at as well. And then the first production batch of Peregrines, these guys landing beginning of last year.
Okay.
So they're all gone. And then we had another batch of these guys land just last month or so. We've got more stuff in the pipeline, but we can sort of talk through that as well as we get there. But that, in a nutshell, that's kind of quick rundown.
What were the bikes on the market back in '06 when you were starting to experiment with like fat tire drop bar bikes? Were there many?
Not a lot, really, to be honest. I mean, the only things that were vaguely close were some of the Surly and Salsa bikes. And obviously there was some custom one-off built stuff around that was in that sort of same mold. Obviously, I was a very early adopter of 29-inch wheels generally. I don't know if you get perspective here, but I'm a reasonably tall guy, about 6'3". So 29-inch wheels just totally made sense to me from day one. And that was really part of the genesis of launching my own bikes, was that I wanted to design a 29er that was what I wanted to ride. I looked around some custom builders, and then I was like, oh, this is more difficult than I thought and expensive. And I thought, well, why don't I just send a message to some of these factories in Taiwan that I knew of, because I've been in the bike industry for a while prior to that as well. I was like, I'll just send them a mail, send them some drawings and see what happens. So I got a couple of sample frames sent over. This was one of them. Or this was the very first one, the first Swift. Very battered and bruised now, but had the Eccentric from the start. And I was big into single speeds at that time, and still am. Not as fervently as I might have been previously, but yeah, most Singulars are single speed capable. So that was kind of part of the genesis of the name as well, was single speed, singular, unique, bit different bikes. And yeah, that was the origins of that.
Yeah. Is there in the UK at the time, were there many people doing fat tire drop bar bikes at all?
Well, influenced to some extent by On One as well, Brant Richards there and the stuff he was doing, and the Midge Bar. So the Midge Bar was really what opened my eyes to the capabilities of a proper wide flared off-road drop bar. That I just love the hand position. Feels a lot more secure in a lot of ways, even for quite technical riding. Your hands are in the hooks and you feel really solid and got a good grip on the bar. And yeah, I just love that riding position. I had a Gary Fisher at the time when I first moved to the UK. As you might have picked up in my accent, I'm originally Australian. So that was when I moved to the UK. It was around 05. And anyway, so I bought a Fisher with, I think, my first UK pay packet back when I was in the corporate world. And then had a custom steel fork made for that. And I was like, I really like that. It handles a lot better now, but I have these other ideas of what I wanted. I wanted something steel, and I wanted something single speedable, and so that was this first frame. And then I went to some events and went to races and stuff, and people were like, "Oh, that looks cool. That looks different. What's that?" And so I thought, okay, maybe I can turn this into something. And so put my life savings, which was pretty meager at the time, into buying a batch of 100 frames. And that was it. And that's where we all started. They landed beginning of 06 was the first batch of Swifts. Half of them were the blue single speed ones. Half of them were the orange geared version. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We can pull that in.
Yeah.
Well, but anyway, we did a single speed version and the geared version, and then, various subsequent versions of the Swift, and then some other models, the Peregrine, the Gryphon, followed on from there.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up your website really quick for the folks that are in the stream here. So I know on the bike that you sent over to review, it's got a eccentric bottom bracket. Do all your models have that?
The two current production steel frames do, as will the new forthcoming Mark V of the Swift. Some good benefits there, quite in addition to just being able to single speed it or internally geared hub it, fixed gear, whatever, single drivetrain, but very nice to have as well because, well, just a quick explanation of what an EBB is for people who don't know what it is. It's an oversized bottom bracket shell with the actual threaded portion so that the bottom bracket axle sits off center. So as you then rotate that insert, it adjusts the effective distance between the cranks and the rear wheel, and also with the saddle and off the ground, obviously. So what that gives you is you can run it at the bottom, say if you're running 700C wheels, or you run it at the top if you're running 650s. So on the one frame, you get a nice way to adjust bottom bracket drop to compensate for different wheel sizes as well. So it adds a lot of versatility, a lot of benefit, adds a little weight, of course, but not a huge chunk. And the units that I use, super well tested and proven. You hear some horror stories people have with EBBs creaking or whatever. We've never had any real persistent ongoing issues that haven't been solved by just taking the thing out, clean it up, grease it up, refit it. The worst thing you can do is let it sit in there for ages, obviously in wet, nasty, especially salty conditions. But that's like anything on a bike, right? So a little bit of maintenance goes a long way. Once a year, pop it out. You just take one crank arm off, slide the whole thing out, grease it up, fit it back in, torque things correctly, away you go.
Yeah. How much vertical adjustment do you get with the EBB?
12 mil from one extreme to the other.
Okay. Pretty significant.
So it's quite notable in terms of the impact on bottom bracket drop, switching between roughly 65, 75, well, depending on the model. But on the Peregrine, it switches then from sort of 65 to 75. So 65 is quite nice when you've got 650s in. 75 is nice if you've got big fat, 55 mil, 729er types, 2.1 sort of thing. They'll fit up to a 29 by even 2.2, possibly even 2.3 in the front, but like a 2.1 in the back.
So Matt asked that question. Any reason for the EBB instead of sliders or other single speed gear?
Sure. I tried lots of things, and in fact, way back when, probably like when I was first getting interested in single speeding generally. Obviously, I was looking at different dropout options, EBBs, etc. And I actually designed at that time a swinging dropout. This was before there was any black cat swinging dropouts or anything that pivoted at the top and the whole thing swung. Even had some protos made, worked okay, liable to slipping, liable to creaking, not especially reliable. And they just look a little bit kludgy at the back. Like one of the beauties of the EBB as well is just it keeps, I mean, aesthetics is part of it for me, definitely, as well as the practicality of it. So it just keeps the rear triangle looking really nice and neat, simple, straight vertical dropouts, not futzing around with sliders and, tensioning screws and that sort of thing. So yeah, for the EBB, we just got 2 set screws in the bottom of the shell there, loosen them off, rotate the whole thing around. Takes two seconds and 30 seconds maybe.
So it sounds like you were working in the bike industry before you started Singular.
On and off, as I guess many people do in the bike industry. But throughout my studies, I was working in a bike shop in Canberra. I studied there for my degree. I was working part-time for periods, more like full-time in one of Canberra's biggest bike shops. Shout out the Lonsdale Street Cyclery. The guys are still there. They were great, and they were really did a lot of custom builds. We worked with some local steel builders there, complete frames, and that's where I started to get an interest in frame design, the impact of different tubing selection, geometries, angles, and so forth. So it really developed a passion for how those things influence the ride qualities of a bike. And that's entirely self-taught and not really an engineering background or anything. It's more coming from a experiential way of designing bike frames.
Right. Well, I think it's pretty unique that you went straight to the factory when you started and went production, because usually the narrative I hear is like someone builds and then they create a semi-custom and then they go maybe do a production run, but you just went all in right away.
Well, sort of. I mean, I knew that I'm quite handy, but I'm a good bike mechanic, but I've never built a frame. I'd love to. I've got intent to, do a course at least for some time. And now I've got this fantastic new space. It's also making me think, okay, I should get a welding gear or brazing gear and start to have a crack at it. I would certainly like to, but that's a long road, right? And this was around the time 05, there were quite a boom in custom steel one-off builders. And I could also see how tough those guys do it, right? Like you not only have to establish a brand and a customer base, but you have to build everything as well, plus run the business, do your accounts, bookkeeping, all the rest of it. Really tough scene, and, huge plaudits and kudos to the guys who do that and make it work. And there obviously loads of fantastically skilled solo builders, custom builders around, and small shops. I love that stuff. But for me, I thought, okay, for something that's going to be manageable for me, I had a full-time corporate job at the time as well, right? So that meant that there wasn't really bandwidth to be able to learn how to build and braze frames and then build a business off the back of that. I was like, okay, well, if we can order from Taiwan, really fantastic factory there, still the same factory used till today. Super people, great to deal with, fantastic qualities of frames, very few issues, like less than 1% failure rate of frames. Have sold 2,500 frames now, roughly. And so the tie stuff, that's in the steel stuff. I should say some of our earlier tie efforts had a significantly higher fail rate than that. But steel stuff is solid, and the new tie stuff is super solid. We've had 0 failures so far, so they've been great.
Cool. So we got a question here from Gone Bikepacking. Who were your early frame building / design inspirations?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff. So, I mean, it's been evolving over the years, but definitely, I guess you could say also in terms of the business model is Grant Peterson and Rivendell. So Rivendell was certainly, and even prior to that, I always loved the old Bridgestones. So I really got the bike bug, 90s, early 90s mountain biking scene. So a lot of those old Fat Chances, that sort of thing, that era, always loved those kinds of high-end beautifully made steel bikes. Then in terms of designers, I guess as I then, discovered the internet, that opened up a whole new world of awareness of different builders around. People like Richard Sachs are amazing, just so beautiful at their craft. So got into the whole sort of classic rendezvous scene, understanding some of the old French builders, constructors, René Urset, Alex Singer, and those sorts of bikes, and seeing that's, I guess, the genesis of thinking about drop roads, drop bars, fat tires. And that's the thing. You look back at those early 20th century bike race pics riding on gravel roads. What are they riding? Big balloon fat tire bikes with drop bars and grinding it out, and they rode great then. They still ride great now. So just an evolution of those same sorts of ideas of what's comfortable for riding, broken surfaces over long distances. And so that's kind of the good. We're ploughing.
We got a question here from FJ. Are you planning to work on titanium soon? So it sounds like you've worked with it in the past and currently.
We do currently offer some tie frames. Do you want to pull up the site maybe, Russ, and I'll grab one and bring it up?
So it's the tie, the Gryphon that comes in.
Let's take a look at the tie Gryphon, sure.
Yeah. Sweet. So we've got over 100 people here in the live stream. If you guys have questions for Sam, be sure to put them in the chat.
Well, if there are any specific bikes people want to see, we've got pretty much most of the singular history here. But this is the tie Gryphon.
Here's a quick question. What's the difference between the Gryphon and the Peregrine? Under which circumstances would one choose one over the other?
So Gryphon's more of, think of it as a drop bar mountain bike rather than the Peregrine, which is more of a gravel bike, touring bike, cross bike, do anything sort of bike. Whereas the Gryphon is more straight up, off-road leaning. They fit full 29 plus, 29x3 tires. They're really more off-road leaning, really, rough stuff, adventure touring, fantastic. 29 plus wheels are great for that sort of use. That's really the distinction. You've got sloping top tube on the Gryphon as well. So that gives you a bit more clearance, better for technical riding. They're a little bit slacker, head angle, geometry is designed more for more technical off-road riding, like fantastic on sort of moderately technical single track, which is really where I came at it from originally, sort of, an old cross-country mountain bike racer. That's the sort of riding that I most enjoy doing, is like fast-flowing single track with a few little rocky rooty bits. Great, not hucking big jumps and that sort of thing, but just fun cross-country off-road mountain biking, which I think is what most people do, right? In reality, we've got all these big dreams of epic journeys across continents, but most of the time going for a blast for an hour in the woods close to home, if you're lucky enough to have that at your availability. But so I want a bike that's fun for that sort of riding, as well as something that you can load up and go across the continent.
Yeah. So here's a question I get fairly often, and it's if you can put any handlebar on any bike, but if you were to in designing a drop bar off-road mountain bike, how is it different from a flat bar? Would you design for a flat bar?
Sure. Well, leaving aside considerations of suspension capability, but basically you've got the shape of a drop bar. Your hands, your main riding position is here at the front of the hooks. So that's significantly further from the center of the steerer over here, right? So if you've got a flat bar mountain bike, your hands are here. So instead your hands are here. So, it's quite a difference. So you need to compensate ideally with the combination of frame and stem potentially, but you want shorter reach at a higher stack.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I feel like that I get that question all the time on the channel. That I want to get bike CAD and just show what you're aiming for is the same relative position.
I've got a good drawing. I need to get it back up on the site, which is a Swift overlaid with a Gryphon to show that, that compensation of being shorter and taller, so to speak, it is, compensates for the change in bar position, leaves your hands in roughly the same place relative to your body position and to the stem.
Right. Let's see. So you
So
recently
the work on titanium, maybe we can say a little bit more about how we work on titanium.
Okay. Yeah,
so at the moment, currently do these as like one-off semi-custom. We sort of start with a standard geometry, but we can adjust things like whether you want integrated head tube, external cup head tube, bottom bracket standards, axle standards, tire capacity. You might say, never going to use 29 plus, so we can, optimize the geometry for whatever your envisaged tire usage is. Drivetrain options, braze-ons, all of your rack. This has no rack mounts or anything. The other bike, we can do anything: cage mounts, rack mounts, mudguard mounts, so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's great to have that flexibility, but it takes a little time. It's currently around 3 months, 3-4 months for delivery on the tie frames. So sort of semi-custom deal. But we also soon doing a batch of production tie kites, which is the faster, more gravelly tie bike that we do. And you can grab one of those if you want, but it's kind of more gravel road leaning, whereas the Gryphon is more off-road trails oriented. The kite is more of a straight up gravel bike, let's say.
Right. What's the, what's the weight difference between the tie and the steel version of the Gryphon? Is it pretty close, or is it like significant?
It's fairly significant. It's let me think off the top of my head. Frame and fork, you thinking?
Yeah.
And it's probably best part of a kilo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't know how much time you spent on tie bikes at all, Russ. But nothing rides like it. Like, I love a good steel frame. It has a very unique feel as well, and I like switching between the two. But tie really just does have its totally unique ride feel. It's amazing how different a feel you get, even between different steel tube sets, right? So the earlier versions of the kite, the very first kite I did had canty brakes, and we got one back there somewhere. It was very slim to tubes, very slim steel fork. Flexed around quite a bit. Lovely to ride. Still one of the nicest riding bikes I ever designed. And if we've got time and interest, we can maybe talk a little bit about the future project along a rim braked bike coming back into the range, maybe. What would we say? The different materials, different tube sets, it does make quite a significant difference to the feel of how a bike rides.
Yeah, I've got a titanium bear claw.
Okay. Yeah, they're cool. I love what they do. They're big into the fat tire drop bar stuff as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. When they first came out, like the cost was, it's expensive, but it was way more affordable than
semi-reasonable. less than some nice handmade US made custom thing. Yeah. Well, that's it. That's a similar price point that we try to hit around that same sort of mark as Bear Claw. In fact, at the moment we're around that mark even for the semi-custom versions. But there will be a price adjustment once the new production frames arrive. The custom stuff will go up a little, and it'll be more like full custom with full custom geo as well. And then we'll have the production off the peg stuff for in the short term, near term. Around July, they're due to land. Pre-orders going live pretty soon, but they're due to hit July time. We'll have some coming straight to the States and some coming to the UK.
Yeah, let's talk about the you're starting to import into the States. What sparked that move?
Back in the first time around of Singular, we'd had US distribution in the past to some limited extent. So previously worked with a shop in Wisconsin. Had a great relationship with them while it lasted. Sadly, I think the business there went under, and just, that was the time, I guess we were starting to have some challenges as well. Anyway, so for a period, we didn't have any distribution in the US. Then things went quiet. And so, this relaunch of the brand, then, this is the first new US distribution channel that we've got. So working with my old friend Stefano, from Biciclista. He's a fantastic guy, Italian. Met him at a number of Italian, European, world single speed races. So we were both heavily into the single speed mountain bike and cross scene in UK and Europe. Runs an amazing event called Rockville, which is just near Cremona in northern Italy, near Milan. Incredible race every January the 6th, Epiphany. This beautiful, tiny little, almost derelict. Well, it's around a derelict castle, estate house in Italy, and it's a fantastic event. Anyway, Stefano, fantastic bloke. He and his family moved to Portland a few years back. He took his clothing, Biciclista clothing. He's always done our clothing right from day one. It took the business over there to Portland. Has been making a really good go of it in the States, now importing some other Italian brands into the US. He's bringing in the beautiful Ingrid cranks and drivetrain stuff that they do, which is amazing. So he's been distributing that in the US for a little while now, as well as some other smaller Italian brands. And so when I was looking for distribution in the US, immediately, I kind of called Stefano and said, "Hey, Stefano, who should I be talking to?" And he was like, "Well, why don't you talk to me?" And okay, sure. So yeah, we thought, okay, well, we've got a batch of frames coming. We send some of them to him as well, and yeah, we can get some out from there, save on shipping costs for US customers. You've got the contact there in the States you can deal with directly. Any warranty issues go through him as well. So yeah, that's a much better way of doing it. And sadly, I've been frantically trying to update our web shop so it sells through into US currency and it reflects the stock that's available in the US, which it's currently not doing, but I hopefully get that sorted out tonight. But yeah, anyway, so that's the intention. So we'll have US-based distribution there, but also working through shops in the States as well. We've got a few shops coming on board. Golden Pliers in Portland, fantastic little shop there. And yeah, and a few others in the works. So yeah, stay tuned on the dealer page. If people have good local shops that they think might be worthy singular dealers or interested in working with us, please put them in touch.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. All right, we've got 121 people in the chat. If you guys have questions for Sam, put them in the comments. So someone asked a question, are you going to expand to any racks or other accessories to go with the bikes, or are you going to stick mostly with the frames for now?
Frames for now, we've been doing the stems, which are really nice. There's kind of a high stack stem called the Lang. Kudos to anybody who gets the Lang high-rise reference. They're really nice, but we do two lengths now, 90 mil and 70 mil. They're all out of stock, but we've got another batch on the way. They sold really quickly, so but they've been nice. They're kind of hideously expensive, and even then they don't make much margin, but they are cool. So yeah, you know, potentially racks down the track could be. I've got a few ideas about things that can work nicely there. But yeah, for the main, we're really focusing on the production frames and production steel. Maybe if we want to talk about new stuff, I can show you the conception of the new model.
Yeah, let's see it.
Cool. So I don't know how much can you still hear me when I'm moving away, Russ?
Yeah, it still sounds pretty good.
Okay. Well, I'll keep talking as I walk and grab this bike out there.
Here's a great question from Wotwise. How does UK gravel riding differ from the gravel we have in the States? And are there any like unique geographical customer demands? Such a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're just riding bikes on different surfaces, right? So I think there's some specifics around some, particularly once we get into the competitive stuff around the US gravel scene, there's certainly some peculiarities there. And there's specific bikes that are more appropriate, useful for that type of riding. But I think, you know, there's more similarities than there are differences. So a bike that rides well in one place for a kind of general genre of riding is going to work well elsewhere in any case. So some stuff in the UK, obviously, we're renowned for our weather here. So it tends to be wet. So I try and design in clearances, fitments for mud guards, aka fenders. So yeah, that's a big part of it, to try and make sure that you've got something that deals with weather. It's also a reason of why I've been a proponent of, generally speaking, of disc brakes, because they just work great in the wet and the mud and the muck. But having said that, let me talk to you a little bit about the new idea for a new version of a canty-brake bike. Where's my Osprey?
Well, the only kind of conception of UK gravel has been from Jack Luke on Bike Radar and Catherine, I forget her last name. But it sounds like there isn't the same variety of just empty gravel roads, that you end up either on like a tow path or a single track. So like,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we don't have the scale. It's not like you get onto a gravel road like you get out in the Midwest of the US and you just jump on and you're barreling along and going great distances. Should have heard it better. So yeah, you've got to mix it up in the UK, and most of your, say, aka gravel riding is riding, that's it, tow paths, bridleways, back alleyways, laneways, finding the fun stuff wherever you can. Shout out to my old friends, the Diprose brothers, Phil and Andrew Diprose, who just launched a new publication called Superstore Wilderness, which is a fantastic large format newspaper, magazine, journal. They're the guys who did the Ride Journal, fantastic magazine out of the UK a few years back. So two brothers, the creative geniuses, and two of my best friends in the UK, well, best friends anywhere, just released this Superstore Wilderness, which is a really cool publication. So I urge folks to check that out and take a look at it. And that's exactly what it's about, is finding the wilderness between the superstores, finding what you can and the fun little bits and the back alleyways and cut throughs and so forth. Yeah,
I love that. All right, so let's talk about the rim brakes. Rim brakes are not dead.
Rim brakes are definitely not dead. At least I hope not. We'll be doing what we can to try and make sure that we've got some good bikes for them. So well set up rim brake in dry conditions, works perfectly adequately for most people, most riding most of the time. Super simple. Anyone can adjust them. You don't have oils, fluids, bleeding brakes, etc. Those kinds of hassles. Very field serviceable as well. If you're really out amongst it, simple to look after. Got their drawbacks as well, obviously. Wet weather performance, rims wear over time, pads probably wear more quickly than on a disc brake in dry conditions. But what they do allow you to do is have a really nice, smooth, flexible bike. So what makes, in my view, a really nice riding bike is having the right amount of flex in the frame. And with a rim brake bike, you can have a much lighter gauge of fork blade because you don't need to deal with the braking forces going through at the hub. You've got the braking forces being applied at the rim, and therefore the fork itself can be a little more compliant for the ride quality and doesn't become overly flexy under heavy braking. And similarly on the back as well, you can have lighter, thinner stays, so you've got a little more cushioning through the back end.
Yeah, I used to have an All-City Space Horse Canny, and I could see the fork blades like move like as you're going, and you see that on many like a disc brake.
Not to the same extent. You can do, and certainly on our steel Gryphon forks, you see them flexing around. But what's interesting as well is, and what I've come to develop my understanding of as well, is how much difference tyre size makes on fork flexibility. I mean, this is particularly apparent in doing the tyre stuff and the custom frames there, that riding the same bike with different wheel sets on it, and I was worried about the tyre forks being too flexy. And one of the first ones I did have was pretty flexy, and for me, big guy pushing 90 kilos, going hard and fast and braking hard, they were like, ooh, that's a bit flexy. But that's with the 29 plus tire on it. And then I put some 2.2s, the Hersey, whatever the Fat 700 55 Hersey tires are. And it rode beautifully, nice and really smooth, but, not so scarily flexy as with the big wheel on it, which obviously has more weight, but more traction, most importantly. Right. So the forces that you've got going through the ground, because of the bigger rubber, having more rubber on the ground, is greater. So putting more force through the fork so it flexes more. And so what can be a really nice level of flex with one tire can be too stiff if you go to a much narrower tire, or even vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge with I get on bike reviews, I'm riding a particular setup and someone will ride the same bike, but using completely different variables that will come to different conclusions. And neither of us are wrong, but it's like we can't agree.
It's your subjective assessment of, in the conditions that you've ridden and used that bike. Yeah. Totally.
So Steve Fuller's got a question here. How do you balance the suppleness of the fork blades for comfort to reduce braking chatter with canties?
Huge. This is the solution to brake chatter, not solution, huge mitigation to brake chatter with canty brakes, cross bikes, or any canty brake bike. So most or a lot of canty brakes will have a cable stop somewhere off the headset spacer hanging down here. And then you've got this outer going to here. What that does is you pull on the front brake, the fork flexes, and the brake gets pulled on, right? So if you've got the stop here underneath the stem, the fork flexes back. It pulls the brake on. So when you're braking, it gets harder. The brake tightens up. Then it gets to a point, it releases and judders, and the fork springs back this way as the fork springs back. And then the brake is like pulsing on and off because of its own braking performance. And that's what causes fork judder under braking. And a large part of that is because you've got the cable stop here. If you put the cable stop on the fork crown, you've only got, this is all flexing together, right? To an extent, because most of the flex in a fork actually happens at the crown. Yes, the blades make a difference as well. But if you're flexing from here, you don't have that effect of shortening and lengthening the brake wire as you pull the brake on. So that makes a massive, massive difference. So anybody with a canty brake, get one of these things and mount it on your fork crown, not from your headset hanger.
I gotta try that. So which particular one is that one that's on there?
I don't know, some cheap thing I bought online. Whatever, just look for canty hanger fork crown or something like that. You should find them. They just bolt straight through. I had to futz with this one a little bit. Sometimes it can be difficult to get them to fit around the headset. That's part of the reason I've got this really skinny old, what are they? Crank Brothers headsets. They're really nice. Can't get them anymore, I don't think. But anyway, but well worth making that work.
Nice. So Armando asked, what drop bar handlebars are you using?
Armando, we met in Portland. How you doing? We met at Golden Pliers a couple of weeks back when I was there. What types of drops? Lots of different. On this one, it's got the crust towel racks on it. I quite like them. I guess I'm quite used to the type of off-road drops that I'm used to, which is more of a sort of more typical shaped drop bar. Not that one. Anyway, like the Gryphon we had before, which is basically like, it's not a South cow chipper, but it's a lot like that. And for me, that the cow chipper shape for me is my preference for more off-road leaning stuff. The wide ones, lots of control, not too much reach, not too much drop, but don't have the funny ergo bend in them. Not a huge fan of that. But it's a personal thing as well with bars, right? It's what works for one person doesn't work for someone else. I find them really deep drop in the towel racks, which not so great for me. But I know a lot of people love them, and the towel racks are nice. But mostly, salsa bars I think are pretty good. Salsa and whiskeys. I've got some of the whiskey number 9s or something. They're the flared whiskey drops. They're really nice. So there's so many good bars. I mean, this has been one of the huge things over the past 15 years of 20 years nearly of being into the sort of drop bar off-road stuff is the proliferation of bars, just even in the last 5 years, right? So Salsa and Surly were, not Surly so much with the drops, but Salsa were one of the few names in the game of doing like wide flared drops with the wood chippers originally, which were a horrible, hateful bar. Shout out to the midges, though, that way back when. And I think you can still buy them. But they had funny short drops. But now you've got so many options, and everybody's doing gravel bars, and now more and more wider and wider gravel bars, which is, for me, off-road drop bar.
Yeah. Are you a fan of the dirt drops where the hoods are really angled in, or do you prefer it when the hoods are
I like them with a bit of an angle, not too much of an angle. So this is the problem with those wood chippers, because they try to keep the hoods vertical. So that you had a similar hand position to a normal, aka normal road drop bar, that the hoods sit fairly vertical. But what that means is, because the bar then flares out, you put your bar in the flared portions of the drops, which should be your primary riding position, and then you try to reach the levers from there, and it's like the lever's vertical and your hand's on this flared drop, and it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
I like a bit of flare, and I like the hoods in line with the flare, and it can actually kind of flatten out the hoods depending exactly what brakes you're using. But I find them really nice, comfortable with like this sort of 24, 30 degree flare on them is really nice. And I like when the drops aren't too flared out that way as well. So when you've got the actual drop portions, I like them a bit of flare, but some of them, like the Ragley Luxies that I actually had a hand in working on designing. In fact, there's a set floating around here. Let me grab them. I had them out just before. So we've got the levers and stuff attached. Confusing, but anyway, so they flare. Where are we? They flare out.
Yeah.
That way. So they're really super flary, super ultra shallow. These were really massively innovative drop bar at the time, back when you could pretty much only get the Midge or the Soma rip-off Midge, the June Bug, I think it's called. Yeah. We came out with these. This is Brant Richards as well from One. Went off and started his own thing, Ragley, which is still going as a brand, but I don't think Brant's involved anymore. They did these bars, and these were a huge improvement on the Midge, and really great, for proper, more full-on technical off-road drop bar mountain biking, let's call it, rather than gravel riding. They're great. They're pretty. At the time they felt ridiculously wide. I hold them now, and I'm like, they actually feel like normal. Yeah.
So we got a great question here. Sandra, he's like, how do you spec rim brakes now that most of the big component manufacturers seem like they're moving away from them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. Paul,
yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. I mean, they're expensive, but they'll last you forever as long as the bike does. So,
have you tried the touring Canties?
Yeah. Well, actually, they're on the back of this.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So this is the really wide ones, heel clearance, because this was my previous cross race bike. I used to winter maybe come around and probably do one race a season. It's my usual thing these days. But yeah, so race cross on this, but with the wide profile ones at the back, you clip your heels getting on, and you only need to do that a couple of times before you realize, yeah, okay, I'm going some low profile Canties on the back.
Yeah. So we got a question here from Robbie Ancia. For the Peregrine, if someone were to run an alt bar setup, do you have any recommendations to compensate for the shorter top tube length?
Yeah, longer stand. Or a bar that reaches forwards as well as going back. So let me grab. Yeah,
I mean, I really like the Richie Coyote bars or Coyote bars. They're kind of designed for an easy alt bar switch from a drop bar. Like,
yeah, I don't know the Coyote.
Yeah, they're really good. They've got a forward sweep before they go back, and like usually I find that I only have to maybe adjust the stem length by a centimeter or so.
Yeah, so these are the Nitto Albatross bars. So they kick a little forward. I've actually got some other, I think it's the Surly Transit bar, maybe they're called, that actually come even a little more forward and don't flare back so dramatically. So I'm going to change these out on this bike. But this is actually the very first Peregrine prototype that landed in 06. And yeah, I've mostly ridden it historically with a drop bar, but recently as a kind of round town out riding with my wife, take the dog out bike, put these on it, and I love it. You know, the kind of more upright position, but I want to get a little bit more forward. So yeah, that's what I'm going to stick on there. Of the serving, I'm pretty sure it's the transit bar, or something like that. That brings the grips a little more forward and goes a little bit more forward from the handlebar clamp. So that's it. It's all of these things with different handlebars. It's all about hand position, where you want your hands to sit, and what shape of bar or length of stem do you need to achieve that. What else should we get up here?
So Steve here is digging the down tube shifter.
Give us some bike requests. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Down tube shifters is one of those things. Is a very limited customer set.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily losing a lot by having them on and not using them. Obviously, if you're going single speed, then you've got some extraneous down tube shifter bosses sitting there, which is not so pleasant. But as long as you've got, some sort of cable stop on there, they work okay. But then you've got exposed cable. I don't know, maybe we just need some sort of make our own little adapters. Anyway, we've never made a production bike with down tube shifter bosses. I think it's true to say. Oh no, hang on. We did the first Ospreys. I got sidetracked in all of this discussion and with the questions, but I never finished talking about the new rim brake bike and what it's going to be. So that kite that we just had here, the Canti-Brake kite, and the Osprey, this was our sort of Audaxy classic, super slim, lug steel road bike. The new one will be basically a mashup of those two things. So it'll have clearance for up to about 50 mil tires, Canti studs, but it will otherwise look much like this with the lugged head tube, seat cluster, dropouts, in fact, full lug construction pretty much, rim braked, nice slim tubes, nice riding, fat tire clearance, not loads of mounts everywhere, but all the mounts you'll need, rack mounts, mudguard mounts, quill stem, quill only. The previous batch of these Ospreys, we did a threadless version, but it'd be 1 inch quill. And that's the idea. So we've got some, well, it's on the drawing board at the moment. We've got some final drawings, going to get some samples of those made up. But yeah, look for those probably maybe winter this year, spring 24. Cool.
I see that Biciclista US is in the chat.
Okay. Ciao, Stefano.
I just I was assembling the Peregrine, and it's been a while since, like, all my personal bikes are friction shifter, and
right.
It's
okay.
To set up the rear. I got it set up. I have all 12 gears down.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty sweet build that you've got there from Stefano Biciclista. So he built that up with the Ingrid stuff on it as well, which is really sweet. So interested to see how you get along with that. But lovely Campag record or even super record levers on it, which work with the Ingrid derailleurs. Those derailleurs are awesome. You could just change the chip on them and changes the cable pull, and you can basically use any shifter, any derailleur, any cassette, super modular. A really cool setup. Not cheap, but super nice.
That's a treat. I don't think I've used a Campy drivetrain or Campy shifters in like 5 years. It just pass through
this only bike I have with Campy these days is this old thing, which is pretty much full 10 speed. It's a bit of a mishmash. Veloce, chorus, whatever.
Yeah. So currently, if someone wants if someone from the US wants to buy a frame, do they go through your website or through the police website?
Either work. As I said earlier, so we're currently updating my site so that it will be a US version of the web shop. So they Biciclista can help directly, or people can come to me, whichever they prefer, really. But the online web shop will really be through my site, through singularcycles.com.
Okay. Yeah. So someone asks, any plans for a new Biciclista/Singular?
Yes, indeed. So Stefano and I need to talk, but there's been so much going on. It's like, but no, we're going to do something maybe a little more casual, like we've done, more like classic cycling clothing, jerseys, lycra stuff in the past, which is nice and still, for me personally, still what I mostly wear to ride because I find it comfortable for riding, right? But yeah, certainly, some of those more casual rides, your party pace rides, you don't want to be all done up in lycra. So, we would do maybe a little more casual jersey as well, a little more subtle branding. So yeah, we need to talk. Stefano and I will mull it over, and people have ideas or thoughts about designs. Then so we do have stock in the US in Portland with Stefano Biciclista, and I also have stock here in the UK, and we have a few other select dealers around the world: Japan, Indonesia, Netherlands, and in the UK, and they all have some degree of stock as well. So certainly either come through the singular site or through your nearest dealer. Hopefully we've certainly got at least some stock of everything in Gryphons and Peregrines somewhere in the world at the moment. Hopefully you can find what's near you.
Yeah. Cool. So we got 130 people in the chat. If you guys have questions, leave those in the little chat bar. So I guess what's next for Singular?
Yeah, so we've just moved into this new workspace, which is brilliant. So that's going to be a huge change. So we start doing some more custom builds and stuff out of here as well. So I'm going to start offering custom builds here in the UK. And as we already discussed, some new models in the pipeline, some more new production titanium stuff. Some work on the website. But no, that's it. So, I mean, we've sort of been down the road before of trying to do too many different things at once. And I don't want to fall in that trap again. Spread myself too thinly. So I kind of want to focus on the specific limited range of frames that we've got. I think 3 models in the near term, 3 or 4, is enough to keep us going. And hopefully, with the US distribution, we try and build a few more fans over there, get a few more frames out in the States. And in other corners of the world. So just trying to gradually grow the brand organically, and on to bigger and brighter things.
Yeah. So what's so it sounds like you started the brand back in 2006, and maybe there was a little bit of a lull. Like, what made you want to kickstart and or reignite the brand and start to expand it?
Yeah, so and I think I made the comment earlier, Russ, as well, is like seeing all these bikes coming out that go, Christ, that looks exactly like the bike that I designed 12 years ago or whatever it was at the time. So that was it, really, just seeing the people's appreciation, enjoyment of the style of bikes that I've always enjoyed riding and designing as well, becoming more and more popular. I thought, it just felt like a good moment. Well, hopefully not just after the wave has crashed, but I think maybe it's like anything. There's trends involved in bikes, but for me, this style of bike is something that can endure as well, because it's the sort of riding that it engenders, rather than chasing the latest technology and the latest fad and the latest trend. Thinking of these kinds of adventure touring, off-road leaning, gravel bikes, whatever you want to call it, that style of thing, I think, is always going to have a place. Because it's the type of riding that it's most enjoyable to do. It gets you away from the cars and the traffic and that nightmare of riding on the roads, particularly here in the southeast of England, and I know in many places in the States. So it gets you away from those hassles, or at least as much as possible. And just nice practical bikes that are a joy to ride are always going to be a popular thing. At least I hope they are.
I think so. I mean, I think it's kind of timeless. I mean, also, like, as people age, I don't see them going on to skinnier tires. Comfort.
Yeah,
like
not
that.
So much. It's a rare occurrence. Yeah. So that's it. I guess that's a lot of my customers and the demographic as well, is people who've been around bikes a long time. They know stuff. They've been through the carbon, the latest and greatest race bike sort of fad, and then go, actually, the bike that rode the nicest looked a lot like that, and it had slim tubes. It was flexible. It had nice fat tires on it. It had components that were practical. I could fix them myself. I could use the bike. I didn't need internal cable routing and pairing my bike with my computer to update the software. And as I say that, this bike's got Di2 on it, but we can do that. But I think the main thrust of the business and that my ethos has always been simplicity, practicality, nice riding bikes. And that's what we'll hope to continue to do for many years to come.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're getting close to an hour. There doesn't look like there's any.
It's fine, bye.
Few questions.
We've exhausted the questions. All right.
I apologize for the audio. I thought apparently my mic is a little quiet, but I boosted up the gain as much as I can. So hopefully
I can hear you.
Yeah. So Amit Kumar asked, "Do you see rim brakes ever making a comeback?" I mean,
you must have only just joined the show. You're going to have to watch the catch up. We did that about 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
I mean,
well, in short, yes. I think they've got a place. You can make some really nice riding bikes with them. So, yeah. For more thoughts, rewind the video.
Yeah, or watch my numerous videos on old tech. I do think there is a problem.
Loads of great stuff. I mean, good plaudits to you, Russ. Only relatively recently came across your channel and what you're doing, and quickly dived into loads of it, and it's fantastic. So I love what you're doing, and plaudits for what you've carved out as a really sizable audience, and it's justified as well, right? So congrats.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, a lot of people think that I'm a Luddite just because I tend not to gush over all the electronic stuff, but I feel like we've been conditioned that newer is always better. I think newer is new, but everything comes at a cost, So people only focus on what's being pushed on the tech spec sheets. But if you actually think about what you're getting for the money or how much actual sizable measurable improvement, it's fairly narrow.
I agree in a lot of ways. So, yeah, there's advantages to new tech. Like new tech, we wouldn't have disc brakes for me, which is one of the biggest advances in bikes. Like just talking about good things about rim brakes, overall disc brakes are a night and day improvement over rim brakes. But yeah, stuff like electronic gears, yeah, it's fun. I just kind of wanted to build a bike to try it and see how I liked it for my own use. I had a couple of people who do the custom bikes who've gone Di2 capable, but for me, it doesn't necessarily enhance the riding experience and brings as much complexity as it does actual improvement. So yeah. What was the question? This one. There we go.
Packing. Yeah. So, what do you think? Why do you think most of the singlers are being built by Blue Lug in Japan?
Blue Lug, fantastic. Obviously, they incredible shop with their very own iconic style of how they build their bikes, and I think that's what they lean to is flat bar, alt bar. And yeah, I mean, I love their builds. I love using kind of alt bars myself on the Peregrines as well. For a certain style of riding, for a certain purpose, they work fantastically well. If you like that little bit more upright, kickback, cruising around sort of riding rather than, head down, bum up, going for it, then yeah, love the alt bar, flat bar. And I think the bikes lend themselves to that sort of riding as much as they do for the rousing around the woods as well. So.
Yeah, I do think, I say this jokingly, but I do think like the ATVs are the new gravel. Now that gravel has become the new road. Right? So there's just always something.
Yeah.
Well,
this is where
Alusky asks, what's the difference between TIG and lug in terms of?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. So no, I mean, not in terms of durability or robustness. I'd say it's equal. They both make a more than adequately strong way of joining tubes done correctly. So as long as a lug is correctly brazed, the braze is fully penetrated in the lug, and a TIG welded frame, it's a properly welded joint. Then yeah, both equally feasible ways of joining tubes. Personally, I just love the look of a classic lug style bike. There's nothing looks quite like it. I just really dig that aesthetic of lugged frames. And yeah, it's just, a nice different way of doing it. And people who appreciate a nice lug bike know why. And some people don't get it, which is fair enough, right? But yeah, I mean, that's talking back to what we discussed earlier around some of the early frame design influences, like the Rivendell's, like the Hearses, like the Singers, like these old classic 70s bikes, 60s, 50s, that era. Yeah, there's something really looks great to me about that classic load construction, horizontal or very close to it, top tube. Looks great, and so yeah, the Peregrine obviously tries to combine that with fat tires and disc brakes and modern functionality, but with that sort of classical aesthetic.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest kind of practical difference is the ability for kind of more acute angles.
This is true. Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, and hopefully as the company grows and we get a little more scale, we'll be able to do things like fabricate our own lug sets for specific angles and be able to have that flexibility, but you need to be pretty certain of what that angle is going to be. And this is the thing, if you want to adjust it across a size range, this is why all old bikes, basically bikes in the 60s and 70s, they got a lot taller than before they got longer. And that was to minimize the number of different lug sets that they would need to use for any production model. So yeah, it's a limitation. Not one that you can't get around, and that's part of the reason why we've got the high-rise stems work really nicely with the frames as well, especially in the Peregrines, to help get the bars up a bit. So yeah, that balance of getting the bars to a reasonable height but still having some standover clearance can be a quite literally delicate one.
Yeah. All right, so there's a couple of people that want me to ask you about specific things.
Okay.
Steve Macon ask him about Chili Cross and
Chili Cross is coming back, Steve. So
Chili
Cross, fantastic event, which was kind of really just for friends and good customers over the years that I used to run every winter. In fact, I think, well, it's only been since COVID that it stopped, kind of put a bit of a obstacle in the way of things like Chili Cross. But it's a ride that combines cyclocross and chili, as in Mexican spicy chili, or just in general Mexican food is how it evolved. I'm a massive food lover and enthusiastic cook. So I would cook a massive pile of chili. We'd go out for a ride, usually in hideous conditions, in mud and wet and cold in the middle of winter in the UK, across the Chiltern Hills. So there's a kind of du bon ton with the Chilterns chili anyway. So yeah, the Chili Cross will come back. I'm thinking of making it a bit of a bigger thing and a kind of beyond just invitation only, more of a public event, maybe this winter. So stay tuned. Steve, you'll obviously get an invite.
Okay. And Biciclista US asked him about...
Stefano, you must have joined late as well. I did already talk about this.
So is this the ride that goes around the castle?
This is the one around the castle, the ride around the castle. And the Trattoria dell'Alba is my favorite restaurant in the world, bar none, which is this incredible restaurant in a town called Pescaro, I think. I'm probably wrong there. Stefano, correct me if I am. But just near Cremona there, close to the race site. And we would always go for a big meal there on the 5th in the evening before the event. In fact, maybe we did it anyway, around the event, with a group of guys, fantastic group of guys, the heart of the Italian single speed scene. And we go and have a slap up meal there, and incredible food, amazing performance. One of those restaurants, Trattoria, very informal. You don't see a menu. They just bring you amazing food, course after course, great wine. Incredible. If anybody is in the Milan area, search it out.
Nice. All right. Well, we're just over an hour, so I'm going to take us home here. But thank you, Sam, for joining us on our first international edition of the Party Pace podcast.
Thank you, Ross. It's been great having a chat, and yeah, look forward. You're going to be over in Europe sometime soon, I gather. We need to get you to come to the UK.
Yeah, no, definitely have plans. Like, I'm trying to make a list of all the kind of niche indie bike brands that
you can come to Chili Cross this winter, right?
It could time out. What month is it?
Yeah. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, thank you everyone for joining us on another Party Pace podcast. And again, if you guys enjoyed this content, check out the merch store. We have got our Performance Paisley cycling caps coming out soon. We still have a bunch of Save the Front Derailleur stickers and our very spicy, controversial no lycra, no rules stickers, which was too spicy for the Instagram for some people, apparently. With all that said, thanks for listening or watching. Apologies for the audio earlier. And as always, keep the supple side down.